Hello, and welcome to American Exchange, Eric McElroy's American Exchange. Nonetheless, I'm Eric McElroy. I put my name in the title of the podcast. That's how these things often work. Welcome back to those of you who've listened to us before in past seasons. Welcome to those of you who are joining us for the very, very first time. I'm very excited to be back. We started this 3 years ago, 2020. So through just over 3 years ago, where I'm based in the UK. I'm originally from America. I've been here for the last 23 and a half years. And in the run up to the 2020 election, while we're all in lockdown, started a podcast as you do. And things went from there. And so the idea of it was for me to reach across the pond and find out what the fuck is going on in my home country. That was the theme. And that is what we're going to be doing now in the run up between now and the 2024 election. We thought 2020 was important. Well, now we know 2024 is going to be even bigger than that because now we know probably the Republican Party nominee is somebody who engaged in some level of insurrection against the United States. And on the Democratic side of things, we've got the oldest person ever running to be reelected for president. There's every election feels like everything's on the line. And every year it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. This is going to be one of those years. So the goal of the podcast is for me to find out what's happening in my home country, to connect with different political voices from all over the US, and also to translate for a lot of you who are based in the UK what the hell is going on. Because this is happening, people. Trump is going to be the nominee. Trump could very well win re-election. And some of you might be going, well, yeah, that's what we wanted all along. Some of you might think, really? This could actually happen? And I've had people say that to me. Yes, this actually could happen. Our first guest back is the first guest that we ever had. It's Joe Walsh. Joe, I really enjoy talking to Joe because he's a former politician. He's also a radio host, so he knows how to, convey his ideas in a succinct, challenging sometimes way, colorful as well. But he was also a politician. He was in the House of Representatives. He was on, I don't know if he'd say far right, but he was on the right of the Republican Party. He was a Tea Party Republican. He was very vocal against Obama. But over time, he saw the threat that Donald Trump, in his view and mine, posed to the United States. And his final straw that broke the camel's back, as we talked about in the very first podcast we ever had him on, which is worth going back and listen to. We talk about it a lot in this podcast, how much really hasn't changed. But he decided Trump wasn't enough when Trump was in Helsinki and stood up with Vladimir Putin and went, yeah, I agree with this guy. This is my guy. And Joe's gone through an incredible journey to the point where he campaigned for Joe Biden, and he's doing so again. So he's a former Tea Party Republican. He's left the Republican Party and was in the House of Representatives. He has an incredible podcast called White Flag, which has daily updates pretty much every day. He also has some incredible guests on as well. So definitely check out Joe's podcast. I'll mention it again at the end. But if you're coming with us on this, we're going to be talking to some exciting guests. I'm going to be talking to some of the people we talked about a few years ago, or talked with a few years ago. So Essie Cupp is going to be back. I'm got Olivia Troy, who was in the White House working for Mike Pence. She's hopefully going to be back. Brian Karem is going to be back. If you had a favorite guest, Ron Filipkowski is going to be back. And we're going to be reaching out to new voices as well. So if you had a favorite guest that we had previously, let me know. If there's somebody that you've seen in the US that you'd love to hear from and you want me to talk to, let me know and I will reach out to them and I'll do everything I can to connect. Back when we did this before, I had an actual blue tick on Twitter. That was my claim to fame. I was prouder of that than I was of my children. But Elon Musk took that away from me. And that helped me reach out to guests sometimes. But I'll try. I'll try and get anybody I can and make that effort to talk to them and find out what's going on. Because this is going to be a consequential election. And those consequences are going to impact our life throughout the US. And if you're here in the UK or throughout Europe, it's going to be an interesting year, that's for sure. But thank you for joining me. Thanks for coming along. Please subscribe and do all those things. I'll mention that again at the end. But in the meantime, please sit back or enjoy your walk or do whatever you're doing when you listen to this and enjoy Joe Walsh. Welcome back, Joe. You were our first guest 3.5 years ago. Oh,
Wow.
welcome back. Anything changed? Anything new in the last 3.5 years? Anything going on?
Actually, Eric, by the way, great to be with you. I can't believe it's
Yeah.
been that long, but no, uh, nothing has changed. We still in America have two major
Uh,
political parties, and
yep.
one of our major political parties has become a radicalized cult, and the cult leader is on his way to being president again. Scary stuff.
Yeah. Well, I listened back to our first conversation, which was the first conversation ever of the podcast, which was fascinating to see what has not changed. You used the cult word back then. I can think of a stronger C word that we could use as well, which we can. We can use it because it's UK, so they say cunt all the time here.
Yeah.
I probably should have said it that early in the podcast, but anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm sure my producer will be pleased that I've done that. Um, it was October 2020 that we talked. The big thing that we were debating then, or talking about, was that it was right after the vice presidential debate between Pence and Harris.
Wow.
And the fly in Mike Pence's hair was the most memorable thing about that debate. And the question is, where is that fly now?
Oh my God. I don't know where the fly is. We know where Pence is. I mean,
Yeah.
ah, Eric, Pence is where most Republicans are,
Mm.
quietly slinking and sulking and crawling back into Trump's good graces.
So I'm going to do a thing that media people love, is because I'm going to pick up on some of the things that you said to me then that I think are still hold true now. People like Pence and the other Republicans, I'm guessing you would say privately to you, were saying then they don't like Trump, they don't want Trump, but publicly they're supporting him. I'm guessing, has any of that changed with the Republicans that you still talk to?
No, privately, he's a piece of shit, Joe. I wish he'd go away. Publicly, man, he's our nominee. We're gonna win. We're gonna win. Make America great again.
Because I think it was, I can't remember the guy's name, but the chief of staff for Mike Pence. So Mike Pence, who, was basically chased through the halls of the Capitol building, had people saying that they were going to hang him. Has Donald Trump turned on him, horrifically, as he turns on everyone? The guy's chief of staff, who was probably with him that day, has, I think, this week endorsed Donald Trump for
Doris
president.
Trump. Yeah.
Why? Why, Joe? Why are they standing with him?
So I think it's important to understand that Trump is a despicable human being. He's an existential threat to our democracy. I believe that. But he is the leader of one of our two major political parties. Most Republicans support him because they don't want to lose their job, they want to stay in power, and they want to stay relevant. But Eric, don't overlook the fact that there are true believers in the
Hmm.
Republican Party who are as crazy as he is,
Yeah.
who believe in a lot of the bullshit. And that cohort has grown over the last 3 years. So it's not just the cynical Republicans. There are actually more true believing MAGA Republicans in office right now than there were 3 or 4 years ago.
Do you think that that's because we've seen that here in the UK with Brexit and the way people talk about immigration here, and I know that's a big issue in the States, that it's given people permission to say the awful things that they had sort of stopped saying, or think, oh, I probably shouldn't say that, when you have the leader of this party saying that immigrants are going to poison the blood of the country, which is clearly racist and clearly founded in, Nazism, that these are people who felt that, but maybe they've checked it because it was considered impolite before, but now they're just free reign.
So Trump is publicly cruel. He's publicly bigoted. He's publicly intolerant, Eric, and he's publicly dishonest. He's a pathological liar. And every Republican has listened to this the last 7 and 8 years, and Trump's gotten away with all the shit he does and
Yeah.
says. So it's kind of twofold. He's the leader of the party. I want to echo him, but damn it, he says all this bad, horrible stuff and he's not penalized. So I'm going to do the same. We've
Mm.
seen a huge growth in Republicans who have just said, fuck it, I'm going to lie because Trump lies and he gets away with it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the best example is what's his name from New York, the one who was kicked out of Congress, George
Oh,
Santos, who was just
Santos.
a lie. I mean, if people haven't seen George Santos who are listening, this man was, I mean, he made Trump look honest. He was an incredible fantasist.
Uh, uh, his entire life, George Santos was a lie. He got
Mm,
elected based on a lie. But again, a consequence of Trump.
yeah.
When when you bow to and make a pathological liar the leader of your party, you're going to get then a lot of lying in that party. Eric, I'm sure I said this when you and I first spoke. And by the way, everything I'm saying to you just fucking pains me because this was my party.
Yeah.
These are my people, my supporters. Um, the party's become really radicalized. I don't think people around the world know what that means. We're not like you. We don't have an abundance of political parties. We only have two. And right now, one of our major political parties no longer believes in basic truths. Uh, Pay attention, they've given up on democracy.
Yeah.
Like my party wants a certain America back. They no longer believe the democratic process can get it back for them. So they embrace an authoritarian. Trump's going to run this year, Eric, to be a dictator. You know what? They want that.
Mm,
Republicans want a dictator to run this country. And then finally, my former party is open to or indifferent toward political violence to get what they want. I just don't think the world fully grasps where one of our two major political parties is. It's not just Trump.
yeah. But do you think that people are, so I, you and I, we do hits on the media, and one of the people that was in the media here that I was on with recently sort of looked at me off camera and was like, it was, and having him win Iowa made it come home to this person. And they're like, so he's going to get, this could happen. So do you think that, obviously we're here and we only dip in and out of US politics, the most people, but I'm wondering if that's the same for people in the States and on the left who've just shut Trump out, thought, I'm done with this man. They're in their liberal bubble, and you and I are, we're junkies. I mean, this is just your lifeblood. I am
Yeah.
into this stuff because I care about it. And I found it, all these reasons. But so we're like, I've been absorbing Trump all of this time. He never went away from me. He's not gone away for you, obviously. But do you think that's what's happening on the left now in the States? And that's why the polls are tied and people are like, oh, well, Biden bothers me and he's a little bit old, but whatever. And now will people start to see it? Or, I mean, have they been there and they don't care?
No, I think it's more the former. And that's what Team Biden is counting on.
Right.
That the country really hasn't begun to process and or wake up to the fact that that fuckhead is going to be the Republican Party nominee again. Um, Now, I said this on CNN a week or so ago. I said I don't know why you have me on because I'm a lousy guest because I've been so boring. Like I go on TV to talk about the state of the Republican race for the nomination. There is no fucking race. There's never been a race. I mean, this has always been Trump's.
Hmm.
Uh, and we try to we've tried to create like Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley have a shot. They've never had a shot. Biden is counting on what you just said, that the Democrats are clearly not engaged, and
Hmm.
most of America is not engaged in where we are. But once they see Trump v. Biden again, all hell will break loose, and Americans will come out, and there's no way Trump will win because it'll all register. I don't feel that way. I think, Eric, I think Donald Trump has gotten more popular beyond just his hardcore base. And I think Biden and the Democrats have many, many more problems than they know.
See, I want to blow you off when you say that, as I'm sure a lot of people do. But again, I can go back to what you said right before the election in 2020, because I've got you on the tape or the pod or whatever. And you predicted then that the Republicans at that point were hoping, because you were saying Trump would lose. You were right. And you were saying the Republicans that were your former colleagues that were hoping he was going to lose and that he would go away. And you said he would not go away. And that is why also before we finish today's chat, I want to get some lottery numbers from you. So if I can have those also. But I don't like your prediction that he's got more. I mean, well, that's why I'm doing this because I'm not there. I don't know. And I know what I'm seeing is that he's never gone away. But is that enough that people are going to suddenly go, oh shit, we can't let this man who is, now the court has found him to be a sexual assaulter. We can go on and on. He's a bad man. He's a bad man, and the people supporting him are you right? I mean, is it the fascist word? Was that I did a show in 2015 where I made jokes about Trump being fascistic, and if it walks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, it's a fascist duck. You know, I think we've come full circle now, and that word gets thrown around, but it's a fascist party now.
Yes. I'm sorry, I paused. Yes, it's a party that full on embraces authoritarianism. And so I'm not quibbling with you. Authoritarianism, Donald Trump wants to be an authoritarian, a dictator, a fascist. I don't think most Republican voters, I'm always careful, Eric, because you know my background. I come
Yep.
from MAGA world. I am MAGA. I was MAGA. I got out of the cult. I'm a reformed MAGA gangbanger, but I'm not one of these MSNBC Democrats who demean these voters, because these were my people, my friends, my supporters, my family members. I do not believe they believe or know that they are fascist. I
Yeah.
believe they've been scared, angry, and they clung to this guy. And look, they're responsible for where they are.
Yeah.
But it is clearly an authoritarian political party that has
Mm.
taken over my party. That I cannot deny. Donald Trump will say, I want to be a dictator, and
Mm-hmm.
most Republicans want that. Now, Eric, one other point that should scare you and everybody listening to us over there. I think more than just the Republican base wants a dictator. Like you
Mm.
brought up the issue of immigration. Eric, I've been a son of a bitch. I've been an immigration hawk my whole life. Secure the goddamn border. I mean, I've been tougher on the border than damn near anybody. I don't like all the cruelty and the intolerance and the racism and the bigotry.
Yeah.
And I want to expand legal immigration. My former party doesn't even want to expand legal immigration.
Yeah.
But immigration and the border are huge fucking problems in this country right now, pissing off more than just his base.
Mm. You're talking about Trump's base or
These
Biden's
the
base? Sorry,
Trump's base.
Trump's base.
This issue is pissing off Democratic voters, and Joe
Mm.
Biden, Eric, has fucked this up. He has done poorly with this. And so I've heard from voters who are not MAGA who have said, you know what? If Trump's going to be a dictatorial son of a bitch and do something about the border, I don't care. So I just think Democrats need to wake up. It's not just his crazy base that like wants a strong man.
Mm. But so
Even
I
though,
mean,
Eric, that is anathema to what America is,
yeah. I
right?
mean, yeah. Well, I mean, this is a good question here. So to have him running for president. So I know you tried to primary, well, you did primary him in 2020.
Yes,
Um, but so in order to be president, you have to qualify to be president. In order to qualify to be president, you have to be over the age of 35, which I don't want to embarrass you here, but I think you might be. I am as
yes,
well. You have to be a natural born citizen of the United States, which I know you've got Irish heritage, but born in the United States,
yes.
as was I. And the third thing is you have to not have engaged in an insurrection against the United States or the Constitution. Um, this is a little bit of a side thing from what you're saying. The 14th Amendment issue is the court case that's been brought. It's headed to the Supreme Court, which is a statement after the Civil War that you can't have engaged in insurrection. It was very designated, obviously, towards Civil War people, but it's being
Yeah.
employed against Trump now. I've seen you talk a little bit on the media. I haven't heard you recently what you say. Do you think that this is the appropriate way to deal with Trump? Because the question of him engaging, I'm going to throw back your words to you from 2020 again. You actually said in that chat before the election, this was the first time you've had a major political party president undermining the election. So we knew even then, before January 6th, before all the shenanigans with the court cases, before everything that he did, we knew before the election, we were talking about the fact he's trying to overthrow the election. So he clearly engaged in one. So shouldn't he
So,
be removed?
Joe Walsh, private citizen, would say yes. So, and I don't mean to be too political with this answer, Eric, but I think the answer is really important. I believe Donald Trump is an insurrectionist. I believe he engaged in insurrection. End of story. But who the fuck am I? It doesn't matter what I think. In America, and I think the world needs, your audience needs to understand this. I know you understand this. We don't, each and every state, the 50 states, they run and manage their own elections.
Right.
Each and every state determines who qualifies for the ballot in that state. So, do I believe Trump should be kicked off the ballot because he engaged in insurrection? I do. But I believe in the democratic process. So, Colorado had every right and authority to say he engaged in insurrection. He won't be on the ballot in Colorado. That's part of our process. Eric, Donald Trump has every right to appeal that ruling, and he did. The courts, namely the Supreme Court, would have every right to overrule what Colorado said. And by the way, I think they will. This is how our process works out. There are a lot of people, Republicans, who say, oh, this is bullshit, Eric. Don't kick him off the ballot. The people should decide. No, we're a nation of laws, and we're a nation of, voting. It's all part of the same process. I would rather Trump get his ass kicked at the ballot than get kicked off the ballot. But I think he engaged in insurrection. This will play itself out. Ultimately, the Supreme Court will rule as they should.
Yeah. I'm guessing because they've got three things they could rule against him. One, they could say that he didn't engage in insurrection, but they don't. The Supreme Court, when they rule, for the people who don't follow it again a lot, they tend to try and slip in between the margins and try and look like they're neutral. So they're probably not going to want to say if he engaged in insurrection. They're probably not going to want to overturn direct. I think they're going to say that Congress hasn't legislated what it means to engage in an insurrection, and they're going to say Congress needs to legislate this. And then that way it just gets rid of any of the indecision, and it makes them look like, see, he might have done, but it's not up to us.
I think you're
seems,
right. I think the Supreme Court will avoid the whole insurrection issue.
Yeah.
I think they'll either do what you did, or they'll say he wasn't afforded due process in Colorado or Maine.
Yeah.
Something like that, some technicality. And I do believe he'll be on the ballot in every state. But Eric, again, I would like to look. Trumpism is the biggest threat to our democracy. What needs to happen is Trumpism needs to get its ass killed at the ballot box. But Donald Trump engaged in insurrection, period. In my mind, he should not be on the ballot, in my opinion.
Well,
but I will accept whatever the court says.
Yeah. But if the Senate had convicted him of insurrection, then he wouldn't have been allowed to be on the ballot. But when he was impeached the second time, but all the senators who voted to not impeach him or not to convict him in the Senate said, well, we'll let the courts decide if he had criminal action. And of course, now he's in court arguing that because the Senate didn't find him guilty, that the courts can't get involved. So this is the thing. They always go, well, we should let the voters decide. That's what a lot of pro 14th Amendment, anti 14th Amendment people say. But we did let the voters decide in 2020, and they've just spent the last 3 years trying to overturn that election.
And Eric, like all of us who claim to be constitutionalists, like I fucking revere the Constitution. What, all of a sudden we're going to ignore Section 3 of the 14th Amendment? Hello, come on. The bigger, broader point, though, is this. Here's my fear. He's been indicted 4 times. He's faced 4 separate times. He's facing 91 criminal felony counts. I have heard from so many voters, Eric, beyond his crazy supporters, who've said, Joe, this is like piling on. It is like they're trying to keep him from winning. Donald Trump being the victim, that's going to play with a lot more voters this year than just his base.
I mean, it's amazing because you would think, well, A, he has gone up in the polls since they did all these, these charges, and B, maybe he has all these charges against him because he's just a very bad man.
Agreed. Completely
It's like
agree.
there's a theme to what's happened here. The fraud of the Trump organization, the fraud of the Trump charities, the fraud of, the sexual assault, the grabbing by the pussy, all of it. Like, who's the central person in all of that? It,
Right, but that's like
uh,
the beauty and the magic of Trump is he's so bad, and every
yeah,
day he says and does so much bad that people roll their eyes at all of it.
yeah. So I mean, so you're not as hopeful as the engagement occurs, that people start to pay attention, that
Well, I think
there's going to be a natural coming home to Biden, because I think, so because again, I'm watching Biden by the numbers from a distance, and the numbers are, yes, he is old, and yes, he speaks like an old man, but he's had good legislative success. The economy is doing better by the numbers. The inflation is down by the numbers. You know, are people going to realize that and come? And that I get, like you said, is that what the Democrats are hoping for? Just as and obviously the campaign for, because he didn't have a primary as the Democratic nominee, so he doesn't get a lot of attention, and Trump sucks up all this oxygen. So that's not a hopeful thing to hang my hat on?
oh no, if I'm Team Biden, I'm hanging my hat, Eric, on all of that stuff. Uh, absolutely, and a lot of that stuff will help. But then I balance all of that positive with we're 3.5, 4 years removed from when Trump was president. So that means we're 3.5, 4 years removed from all the chaos and dysfunction every fucking day.
Mm,
Americans, we have a short attention span. We've forgotten it.
yeah,
That's a big, big deal. Um, whereas people were 4 years ago when he was president, they were scared of him.
yeah,
Now a lot of voters just like look back and laugh at it. That's got to be overcome
mm,
because it's not Trump's running against somebody, and Biden is inherently weak. Yes, he's done a lot of good things that he can run on, but Eric, in America, man, you are what your record is, and you are how you communicate your record. And Joe
yeah,
Biden's 181 years old. He is incapable of communicating anymore. You know this. You're in
yeah,
this business. He cannot communicate. Period. I'm fine with that. But
yeah,
we live in a world where people want to be entertained. They need to be stimulated. You need to show me things are good.
yeah.
The other piece I'll throw in here is, and you and I haven't talked about this issue, I am ridiculously pro Israel,
Mm.
off the charts pro Israel. We don't have to get into that issue, but
But
this
why
is
not? It's
an
such a
issue.
fun thing to talk about. So lighthearted.
Eric,
Let's lighten things up and talk about Palestine and Israel.
this is an issue that completely divides the Democratic coalition in America.
Yeah,
This issue is dividing Biden's coalition. That's never, never good for a politician. The fact that Biden has been very pro-Israel, which is the right thing for him to do, it's going to hurt him politically.
yeah. And I mean, we probably do have. I mean, I totally support Israel's right to defend itself. I don't like Netanyahu, and I think they've walked into a trap with Hamas. Um, but yeah, I do wonder, like so I know that I've heard a lot of Arab Americans or their politicians and representatives. I haven't followed this closely, but they're saying we're done with Biden forever. But they think Trump is going to be better for the Palestinian people. No fucking way. So again,
I don't think they've taken that step to even think that yet. Yeah.
but hopefully with time, and hopefully things will settle down. You know,
Listen
not
to
that they've
you.
ever settled
Listen to
down in the
you.
palace.
Listen to you, Eric. Hopefully and hopefully and hopefully, man. I'm telling you what, here's the deal, my friend. And by the way, when you were here last year or 2 years ago, you went to Vegas, right? Did you not go to
No,
Vegas?
we took a road trip from Seattle to Colorado, and we went through Yellowstone
Got
and
it. Okay, so
Montana
you
and
didn't get
Wyoming.
down to
Yeah,
Vegas.
didn't get to Vegas.
If I were in Vegas right now
Hmm.
and I only had $10,000 to my name and you put a gun to my head, put it on Biden or Trump to win right now, a gun to my head, I'm putting that 10 grand on Trump to win right now.
Ugh. That's not good, Joe. Don't tell me.
Sorry, my friend.
Jesus.
You'll never invite me on again.
No, well, hopefully I'll invite you on to prove you wrong. But I still have you on if you're right.
I'd love that.
'Cause,
I'd love that.
uh, but I mean, that's got to be the wake up call that people have to remember that what Trump was and what Trump is. And but the thing is, we were talking about his voters when you were saying earlier that they're not. You don't want to call his voters fascist, but at some point, people have to own what they do,
Yeah.
and at some point, and I think there is a problem in that you can say, well, the excuse is because I have this in my family as well. So I'm talking about my family here too. They are in the media bubble. They are so far down the right wing media rabbit hole, which I know you know well, they can't see, they don't know. I mean, I got into an argument, I think I've talked about this maybe with you before, but I had an argument with one of my family members who said Kamala Harris had never even been to the border. And then I said, well, I'm pretty sure she has. And I Googled it and she'd been to El Paso. And they went, well, El Paso's not near the border. And then I Googled it again. I'm like, it is the fucking border. So they're they're not in reality. I mean,
Well,
it's a fantasy land.
yes, but to push back on my handsome friend a little bit, you're right about that. It's an exaggeration that Kamala hasn't been to the border. She did go to El Paso. She didn't really roll up her sleeves and do much. It was a photo op. But the bigger point is Biden created this border problem when he got elected. He handed it to Kamala, and they've done shit with it overall. So yeah, does right wing media demagogue that issue? Completely.
Mm.
But it's an issue, and Democrats are going to get hurt by it. And she hasn't really done a freaking thing. But that's on Biden.
Yeah, of course, because the vice presidential role is absolutely pointless. I mean,
Yeah.
as far as a day-to-day function. Although, again, to quote you back now, we did agree that she was a good choice for him for VP when we were talking in 2020, and you said you thought she would mature as a politician as vice president. Has that happened? Because
I'm going to
people
be
seem to
stubborn.
not like her, and I don't know why. Because I think she's fine. I haven't. I mean, she's okay, but they seem to really not like her.
I'm going to be stubborn and stick with her. But I will tell you, Eric, across the board,
Mm,
Republican, Independent, Democrat, she's not respected and well liked. If Joe Biden announced tomorrow that he's not running for reelection, the natural thing to do for him would be to embrace his VP and
yep.
endorse her. I guarantee you Biden would not do that because Biden doesn't believe she's strong. And even
Mm,
if Biden did that, 3 to 4 other Dems would run against her.
yeah.
And that's typically not what Democrats do because she's a black woman and Democrats don't like to, they do play that
Yeah.
game. But Kamala, she's weak. I just, and I would love to work with her. I'd love to be her advisor because she could and should be so much better.
Yeah. And I mean, if Biden isn't embracing her, then that's the problem. It goes to her. I mean, because that's what made Biden strong as a vice president is because Obama clearly believed in him and trusted him and empowered him and had him there. So if he hasn't done
Yes,
that effectively, then that's on Biden. And that's a shame.
agreed. Agreed.
I'm aware of time. The one thing, if I can, just hit you with one more thing, because you were in the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives is functioning really well right now, and that is not what's that's not happening. Just in case there was sarcasm there, in case anyone missed that
Yeah.
tone. It is the House is fucked. I mean, this is the worst legislative record of any House in 100 years. They've obviously tossed out one speaker, Mike Johnson. So Mike Johnson, he came to the House after you left, or do you know Mike Johnson?
Yes. He came
Okay,
after. I just
so
know him a little bit.
he's the Speaker of the House now. He's part of the far right movement, pretty far, proper, like he's a true believer far right, not
No,
like Trump.
and even worse. And I think your audience, Eric, needs to understand that there's a part of my former far right that wants America to be a Christian nation, like
Yeah.
a Christian theocracy. Mike Johnson's one of those true believers. Scary stuff.
So he's managed, as we're recording this, they've just passed a continuing resolution to keep the government. So he's managed not to shut the government down, which is to his credit, realizing because that's what a lot of his supporters want him to do, for no reason other than a threat of the border when they could just pass legislation to help with
Yeah.
the border, all kinds of things. So there's a pointless shutdown. He's avoided that because I think he's realized it would blow up in their face. Um, I mean, what are his prospects for success, if anything? Is he totally? Is it just going to be they can't do anything because he's got a? I think is it down to a 1 seat majority because of
It's one or two.
resignations,
It's one or
one or
two. Yeah.
two seats, so no wiggle room at all, and not a lot. Not he's not a leadership person. He's only new to the leadership. He doesn't have any of the gravitas that like Boehner your speaker?
Yeah.
Boehner had been in the House for 400 years or something. I mean, he had experience. What are the prospects in the House?
One quick point, and then I'll answer that. Mike Johnson kept the government open yesterday, the speaker did, passing a bill with overwhelming Democratic support.
Yeah.
What Kevin McCarthy did, that got him impeached.
Mm,
Look, uh, Republicans told us 2 years ago that if we gave them control of the House, they told us they were going to exact revenge for how Trump was treated. They
yeah.
told us they were going to investigate every Democrat. They were going to impeach every Democrat. They told us, Eric, it was going to be 2 years of investigations and chaos. They've delivered. And because of that, they're going to lose the House. Of that, I am certain. The Democrats will take back the House. So I don't think, even if the hardcore Republicans are mad at Speaker Johnson for what he did, they've got the rest of the year here. So I don't
Mm,
think they want to go through a speaker battle again. And I think
yeah.
most Republicans know they're going to lose the House anyways.
Yeah. It seems like it. I mean, it seems inevitable. I mean, with this kind of chaos and with lots of other things that are boring, redistricting and all that kind of stuff, but not boring. It's exciting redistricting, I
Exciting.
suppose. I guess well, I want to leave you with one last question. If you, because a lot of the people that listen to this are interested in U.S. politics, especially deep from the UK. But we have a huge following. I believe President Biden himself listens to the podcast. I'm pretty sure he does. Um, yeah, I can say that because there's no way to prove it. If
I
you
think
could
he
be,
does.
I think he does clearly. Yeah, because the reason why he's not doing better is because we've been on a break and we're back now, so that should help his
Completely.
prospects. If you could get an audience with the president as some and knowing the people that on Trump's side and knowing what what would be the thing that you would want to say to them to help stop Trump?
So I'd say two things to Biden if I had him alone. Thing one is make this and keep doing what you want to do, Joe, in that make this election a referendum on democracy. I
Mm,
mean, go fucking full, keep doing it, man. Keep doing it. And then the second thing I tell Biden is, Joe, Mr. President, respectfully, you're an old fuck. So what? Embrace your fucking age. It's
yeah,
one of the biggest concerns the American voters have. It's the elephant in the room. Mr. President, embrace it and have fun with it. Every time you speak to the American people, tell them I'm old. I forget things. I forget names. I need to look at my notes. I take 2 naps a day. Big fucking deal. I'm 81 years old. Laugh about it. Have fun with it. I think if he did that consistently,
mm,
he'd neutralize really one of the biggest concerns that voters deep down have about him. And Eric, they're trying to protect him, so they try to keep him away from the
yeah,
cameras and the microphones. If I'm Biden, I'm telling his staff, fuck this. Get me out there. Let me be me. Let me be 81-year-old me.
yeah.
Every American has a parent like this or a grandparent like this. And by the way, he still does stuff. He's still done a great job. He needs to embrace his age and have fun with it.
I think, yeah, I agree with that totally. Because the American elections are won based on the president that you want to sit down and have a pint with or have a
Yes.
hot dog with, and that killed Hillary. And Trump at the time, we didn't think of his existential threat. Then he was the more entertaining figure, and I think that makes a big difference. But
And
um,
now you're right. Back then he was entertaining. Now he's dangerous. But if you still ask the average American who's not tied to either, who would I want to hang with for a hot dog and a beer? The old guy or the dangerous guy? It's kind of, but if Biden could be kind of just a more fun 81-year-old, I think it would change that.
yeah, well, hopefully once they wake up into campaign mode, that happens. I
Yes.
know you've got your fantastic podcast, White Flag. I know that's a good place to listen to you. Anything else going on that people should check out? You've had any new books coming along, or
No, I'll be out there this year. It's still with the podcast. Follow me on Twitter at Walsh Freedom. And I'm just going to be out there on the ground in a few states trying to get independents and Republicans to vote for Biden and not Trump. So I'm going to be on the ground this year doing a lot of campaigning for him.
wow. Well, I'm glad to hear that. It's good to hear that you're out there and speaking to people, and because you can reach across rather than some lefty, person who's
Exactly.
coming in. You can talk their language, and you've been on that side, and I think that makes a big difference because you voted for him in 2016, and you saw
Yep.
some light, and we welcome you. And I'm sure you're enjoying the anxiety of being on the Democratic side of things. We worry about
Oh
everything.
my
It's
God, Eric,
horrific.
my best friends are Democrats now. This is crazy.
Well, we're glad to have you.
Thanks, man.
All right.
Always good to be with you, brother.
Great to talk to you too, Joe. Thanks. So there we go. That was Joe. Frank, funny, horribly honest, as always. And it's dire. I mean, if you're somebody who's just starting to tune into US politics and you aren't a geek like me and haven't been watching this all along, this is real. This shit is happening. Donald Trump could win. And any American that you know that cares about democracy, whether they are left or right, this is the time to get engaged and get involved in the process. Um, I just can't. It's a stark message. This is serious. Um, I, I don't know. I mean, I remember, I'm sure if he could go back and listen to things that I thought or said about George W. Bush, I'd be like, oh, he's awful. He's bad for democracy. But you know what happened? When it was time to step down, he stepped down. When it was time for a transition to occur, his father, he stepped down when Bill Clinton won. The things that Donald Trump has done are undemocratic and terrifying. The fact that he's embracing presidential immunity to do whatever he wants, including assassinate his own rivals. Although since Biden is president, it feels kind of like that means Biden could assassinate him. Bah, but contradictions be gone. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Joe. Make sure to check out his White Flag podcast and just follow Joe when you can on Twitter. He's always a really good, entertaining person to keep up on. And he's right on the pulse of what's happening still within the right wing movement in the US because he still talks to those folks all the time. I hope you've enjoyed listening today. Give us a follow or a subscribe on the podcast platform you're listening to. This is going to be up on YouTube as well. So hit the like, hit subscribe, all that shit. Because otherwise, it just gets the message out there more and more. Tell people about the podcast, please, and keep an eye out for our future guests. So thanks for listening. Talk to you next time. Bye bye.